Let me first just welcome everybody here today, and we'll do some introductions. So my name is Molly Pettengill. I'm the Associate Director for Graduate Recruitment here. And thank you to our panel for being here today. We so appreciate you. The focus of today is going to be answering your portfolio questions. So we want to make sure, give you a little nuts and bolts. Type your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom right now, and we'll queue them up and we'll answer them once we get to that part. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for, and really the conversation about portfolios is going to be driven by the questions that you ask. So these faculty members come from lots of different backgrounds. They can provide a lot of guidance given their experience and expertise within their graduate programs and broadly within the admissions process, and then us in admissions, of course. So let's begin with some introductions. Of course, I introduced myself. My other half and the other part of graduate admissions is Jennifer Faria. Jen, you want to say hi?
Hey, everybody. Nice to virtually meet you. Here to help you if you have any questions after the session.
Yeah, absolutely. Always, you can email us at admissions@risd.edu. So first I'll introduce Anais Isakian. She is led a storied career here at RISD, I would say. She's a professor and a graduate program director in textiles, and in the past has also served as interim dean of fine arts, overseeing 10 different disciplines. We also have Sean Greenlee. Sean, you want to give a little wave?
Hi, everybody.
He's a sound and electronic media artist, furthering the study of sonic practice here at RISD, and embedded within the division of experimental and foundation studies. He's an associate professor and graduate program director in digital media, digital plus media. Sean also teaches within the computation technology and culture concentration as well. And then Carl Esrito.
Hi.
Is the graduate program director and associate director of architecture. His expertise and interests lie in the areas of computer programming, designing tools, and adapting technology to augment human authorship for students.
Human stuff, like the humans are doing stuff too, is the key.
I have the most complicated, Carl's also been heading the application review process alongside admissions for, I don't even know how many years now. And Tiago, who joined us last year at admissions in the process. Hi. Portuguese landscape architect. He's bringing his interest in the intersections of contemporary landscape and the Anthropocene to RISD. He's an associate professor and graduate program director within the landscape architecture program. So this is our group. Welcome, everybody. Before we get into, we already have tons of questions, but
they're rolling in. I'm getting anxious not answering them. Like I've got the question window up and I'm like, oh my, yeah.
Put it away. No, okay. So I just want to set a little bit of a foundation on what we RISD as a whole require for the portfolio. So general requirements. Most programs don't have specific requirements. For those that do, Jen will give you a link right now where you can check out what those are. But really, in general, we leave the portfolio open-ended intentionally so. We want to see what you have. We want you to have the freedom to include the work that you're authentically already interested in and already doing. So that being said, we do, of course, have some advice. And I just also want to say that it's important to think about the portfolio in a comparison between the different schools that you're applying to and understanding those different schools and maybe what they're looking for and the different kinds of programs that you're applying to, because that might change your portfolio. So we are speaking for RISD today. So Jen, what do we got for questions? I know we have a ton here. Let's sift through some.
Yes, they're coming in. Let's see, we got a couple in the chat section. I don't want to lose track of those. So let me just answer those first.
Okay. I see one here. Would you prefer a well-rounded portfolio as far as maybe skill set goes, or is it better to put forward the best work, even if it's the same medium or not the same medium? So best work or well-rounded, what would you prefer? Who wants to start?
I'll start. So we want to see your best work. I don't think that for graduate application, you just want to show a panoply of things, because we're actually looking for some focus and how one thinks through their designing and making and fine arts work. It can be comprised of multiple different sort of media, but that wouldn't be the point of the focus of the portfolio. It would be more to really demonstrate your ideas and in some areas, perhaps some of your skills in that particular area.
Yeah. Yes, I see everybody else nodding.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you find like you're putting something in because you feel like you're checking a box, it's probably not, like, if it doesn't represent the kind of work you would want to have a conversation about with us, that you want to extend and continue, then that's a good excuse to edit it out. In the world of architecture, we often have the problem of even just like a project itself has so many pieces. And so I would even go further in an architectural project and say, edit down. Like if you're showing us a design project that has a site plan, a first floor plan, a second floor plan, a section perspective, research, diagrams, all of that might have been important for like a pinup, but that all doesn't necessarily belong in your portfolio if it's not really indicative of your strengths and what you most care about.
And I think along those same lines, we have another question about whether it's important to include images of process or to just include the completed piece or work.
Well, I would say that it's a balance. It's always a balance, isn't it? So at RISD, we are always very motivated and excited to learn about the process, the creative and critical process. Obviously, that needs to come also with certain images that show where the process has led someone to. And so I would say that it's always about using common sense. If you just show process, but then you don't show us what the result was, we may have lots of questions, which is good, but it's also a truncated piece of information. But if you just show us polished, finished things without ever showing us what was the trajectory and the traps and the hoops and all of that, I would say that usually kind of may put us a little bit off. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking for the Digital Plus Media Department, we're very interested in seeing, and even in our recommendations for the applications, in some demonstration or documentation of your research or working process. We want to know something about how you make your work. And so, of course, we also want to see complete work presented in your portfolio, but definitely like one video, for instance, can do a lot to show us something about the way that your work is made.
Yeah, and I guess like, and as the side to that, how much copy or description should they be including, as they upload images of work? I mean, I can see it being maybe a little bit longer for something, giving us a sense of context and architecture if it's a bigger project and sort of the scope of that. But maybe even for fine arts, I think that some people want to put in a lot. And
I would say that the ideas should come through in the statement. And, you want to sort of represent yourself the way you might if you were sending your work to a gallery. So there might be an artist statement, which is going to be your statement of purpose, but there's not a lot of description necessary for each piece, unless text is part of the work, of course.
Yep. And of course, I just want to also put out there that you can submit different types of media. So you can submit image files that just so happens to be poetry. Right? So there are different ways in describing things without having to put a bucket load of text in the description of the piece. So yeah. Anything else?
On the text front, I will say it's a lot of architectural work is collaborative. So it's a must include to talk through your methodologies when they're collaborative or work that was collaborative. To me, that's a plus, right? It's not points against you that you worked in a group, it's points in your favor, and demonstrating that you know how to properly cite and honor and represent your collaborators says a lot about your future as an artist or designer and your engagement in our community.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to works in progress, you know, I agree with Tiago. I think it's like use your common sense in sort of giving us a sense of how you're doing things, but where that they end up. Do you ever resolve anything, right? So you kind of need to think about that. But what if the work in progress ends up being the most recent work and it's sort of a new thing that they're doing? Is it something to include, even if it is a departure from the most of the other work? So what's your advice there?
I think that's quite exciting as a premise. You know, I'm the kind of person that has trouble wrapping up projects, and you know, a lot of my own practice is about like pressing pause and then spending some time to curate and position and reflect on the work. So I would make sure you press pause on that process with enough time to do that reflection in the portfolio, right? So something like a screenshot, probably, you know, just to give an arbitrary example, might not be as beneficial as saying, oh, I'm gonna stop generating new content and spend some time curating, reflecting, cropping, representing, so that you give that work in progress the kind of respect it deserves in this moment, right? So it doesn't look sloppy. It may not look finished, but there's a level of curation that can come through. And that can tell us a lot about how you self-direct your design process.
Absolutely. I completely agree with Carl. And I think that if you think of a portfolio as a part of your story, it kind of hints at the fact that projects are situated along a timeline of your practice, right? And so you may actually consider that your most recent project, the project that you're currently working through, is in fact something that tells a lot about who you are, about your personality, about your work, your craft, your skill. And so I would completely encourage students to include those. But as Carl said, even work in progress should be curated. So that's not an excuse not to look good. It's just that it's not finished.
Just to add a little more, I would absolutely say to show the most recent work. There will be questions that arise, especially in the fine arts, if someone applies with their undergrad work, which was maybe 10 years ago with very little in between. It signifies that someone only really might be making work in an educational environment as opposed to as a sustained practice, independent practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great advice. Well, this is a good one. What kind of things stand out to you most when you're looking at a portfolio? That's a very, very broad question. I'm not sure that we can answer that.
Negatives or positives?
I don't know. Maybe we do both. I don't know. What kind of, okay, you know what? I think that's actually a good question, Anais. What kind of things stand out that we don't want to see? Because I think that can be really helpful sometimes, right?
Yeah. The number one advice from students or applicants applying from Southeast Asia and Asia. We don't want to see 25 images on a board, period. We really don't want to have to zoom in to, you know, images. We're seeing that way too much from particular countries. And I think it's just the advice that people are getting. Yeah. And it absolutely doesn't work in the fine arts at all.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that you have to think about it as, like Carl said, something to curate, right? So take out and compose and choreograph, you know, the best work that you have to offer in 10 to 20 images, which means you're going to have to edit and then edit again. And sometimes that advice might be good for another school. But again, like I said in the beginning, think about what different programs you're applying to, or different maybe schools or departments you're applying to, because what we're looking for is something much more curated. We want you to make those decisions about what goes into your portfolio and what does not. So I agree with you, Anais. And also, just to second that, is multiple page PDFs tend to give us way too much information. Like Carl said, an entire project A to Z isn't that helpful for us, nor do we have time to go through every single thing. So we want you to pick up those high level, most important pieces for us that you want us to pay attention to in the portfolio.
Can I just clarify something about the multi-page
Yeah,
PDFs
please
and
do.
how Slide Room works when we review it? So in architecture, and I think most design, 99.9% of portfolios are designed in InDesign as a book, and the graphic design of the page is part of it. And we are into that. We likewise want to see that active curating. Just to be clear, so let's say you have a 20-page InDesign portfolio. The best way, and I would say the only way to do this right, is to export the spreads or the pages individually as PDFs and upload them one-page PDFs as a series. That's the best viewing experience for us because of on the back end, that's how Slide Room works. It gives us a kind of thumbnail view. It's designed for us to swipe through from element to element, like file to file, not scroll through a multi-page PDF.
And so just to, not to contradict Carl, but in fine arts, we do not want designed pages in the portfolio at all. We want quality images of pieces, or even if your past is in the design world and you're getting into fine arts, really representing yourself as an artist, not a designer. And there is a very big difference. And if you have questions about that, you might look at a designer's page on the internet versus an artist page, and you'll automatically see a very big difference in the way artists and designers present themselves.
Let me just go back to something that Anais said at the beginning, which is how you curate each page. And now I'm going to bring this down a little bit to the architectures and design disciplines, perhaps. In the architecture disciplines, it's very common that we receive portfolios or part of portfolios where a poster or a panel that was prepared initially for a pinup crit or review is shrunk into a page this big. While that may be tempting because the student has already spent time editing and curating that content, that is not the same thing. So a portfolio is not a poster for a pinup. And so that second tier of edition is, I would argue, fundamental to create a good portfolio. Otherwise, we simply cannot see. And there's also another complication there, which is that some drawings, like plans and sections, for example, in architecture, are done at a specific scale and to be print out at a specific scale. If you just shrink them, they simply do not work visually, graphically. They stop kind of being compelling. And so you have to be careful. We're talking about different things.
Sean, any capital NOs for you?
Well, I think one of the things that I've seen in the admissions process is students will submit project documentation, and sometimes it's difficult to tell whether that documentation is documentation of an actual piece that was made versus, let's say, something that's more speculative, more of a sketch, like in a prototyping kind of phase, right? So I would encourage folks to, when they're looking at what they're submitting, it's not that it's okay to submit, let's say, like sketches or ideas for work, but there can be this kind of, especially with the kind of rendering tools that are out there today, there can be a little confusion sometimes of whether this is documentation of something that exists in the world, or if this is something that is a simulation of an installation, for instance, that could be made, right? So I would really, personally, and I think speaking for our review committee, we'd rather see documentation of work that exists in the world as opposed to sketches or simulations of work that could exist. But I think it's important to somehow be clear in your portfolio what is what, right? So to not try to, I think the thing that we sometimes hesitate about is when there's a misrepresentation that could be made, right? That someone is presenting something as being an installation when in fact it's a sketch or a prototype and didn't actually get made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that again goes back to the kind of copy or description that you do put in Slide Room. because it changes the entire context of what we're looking at, right? So that's important. We don't have you right there explaining anything to us. It's just what we see. So that's a good point, Sean.
Mhm. Can
All
I
right, so-
expand on the
yeah.
like, I feel like I didn't quite answer the actual questions, like, what do I want to see? Like, I
So
skirted
yeah, let's
that
go
by,
into what we actually want to see.
yeah.
Like,
But I'm still going to skirt it. I'm not going to actually answer it because, like it's, but
how about just some yeses though? Some capital yeses, you know?
yeah, I want the kind of work that demands that I pause and look at it. So like if I'm flipping through, which I always do, like I'm not gonna read page 1 and then like digest it and then go to, I'm gonna like skim through it quickly and then go back to what was interesting. I don't think I've ever in a linear way read a book or a portfolio in my entire life, and I will not start with you. So like I would think about like, okay, what kind of work or what kind of curation will engage me into your world via the work? So what kind of, like, can an image or a drawing stand alone and kind of raise some questions, right? What portfolio work will make me want to say, oh God, I hope this person explains this or unpacks this in their statement, right? Like leave some open-ended questions. And again, this is a little bit specific to architecture and design, where often we're dealing with representations that are designed to explain something. Like I want it to still leave some open-ended questions. But yeah, I like things that are strange, uncanny, weird, eerie, not that kind of punch me in the face, but like, induce a kind of double take, like,
And I think on the other end of that, my big yes is to Tiago's point, if you're in architecture and design, make sure we can actually see the work, because if there's so much text on the page that we can't actually see the work and the text is just mush and now becomes a gradient to the side of this image that we think might be beautiful, but we can't see it. And on the same end, in the fine arts, make sure you have really fantastic high resolution images of your work. That's color corrected. It's always nice to see an installation shot so we can understand some sense of scale, but also give us the full pieces as well.
Yeah, I mean, the two most important factors of the application are the portfolio and the statement.
Mm-hmm.
And so just we're talking about the portfolio, but the statement is really critical, and you know, it needs to be your voice, well written, not mention another school by accident that you're applying to. I mean, those kinds of things are really trivial, but they matter when you're looking through a lot of applications. And so as far as the portfolio goes, yeah, I mean, as Molly said, just really very good images. If you don't have the skills to take those images yourself, spend a little bit of money and have your work photographed for you by someone who knows what they're doing. And then the other big thing I would say is we do want to see an edited, so you might start with 40 images to get down to those 12 to 15 that are really going to sort of explain who you are as a thinker and maker.
Yeah, I think what Carl and Anais said, I think is applicable to portfolios in landscape architecture and architecture in general. I think one thing that there are two things that really attract me in portfolios. One is the way someone tells the story of any given project, so the implicit narrative that is there. And the second thing, in architecture, especially over the last decades, we have been completely overwhelmed by this type of digital design using certain kind of software that is super helpful for the disciplines, but that is quite unbalanced in relationship to a sense of materiality that is critical, I would say, in our disciplines. And so I always like portfolios that show a range of materiality, in the sense that it becomes quite tactile, the project. So not just beautifully rendered visuals, as in digital, but something that attunes us more to who the architect is in terms of their sense of what kind of materials they work with, what sense of constructability they have, what sense of tectonics, so how the thing is built is, to me, is something that is what Carl was saying, something that forces me to pause or at least slow down in the flickering of a portfolio and really pay attention. And please bear in mind, when Carl says that we flicker through portfolios, I think that to some of us, people need to understand that we have literally hundreds and hundreds of portfolios that we have to see in a very short period of time. So it's not possible for us to read from page 1 to whatever very slowly. We simply cannot afford that. And so I think that everything that you have that captures our attention because of its uniqueness, its weirdness in a good sense, uncanniness, I think I would say go for it.
I'll just add one thing. I think what I particularly respond to in seeing the portfolio work is coming away from looking at that work, knowing what you're excited about continuing with, like knowing, like, drawing from, let's say, we've connected to some of the answers before, like your most recent work, right? I think is important. Work in progress is okay, but in those things, it's like, does that communicate to us like that's what you're excited about pursuing, right? Because then it allows us to see how you might be able to, branch off from your current portfolio and evolve that and grow that at RISD.
Mm-hmm. So I think the next question is a really good one, and we get it all the time, and I'm sure you guys do too. If I come from a different background, whether it be engineering or literary arts or theater arts, into any one of these different programs, how to best prepare a portfolio when I don't have that sort of fine arts or architectural background?
This is a super common one, especially in our 3 and 3rd year program that is designed for people who have, and Landscape has a similar program. It is not a prerequisite to have studied art, architecture, design at all in any fashion. So there are many people who come in with engineering or law or psychology or sociology backgrounds, people who have changed careers, who have advanced thinking about dentistry and have practiced dentistry and are changing. So here's my advice. Step 1, do not spiral into concern and worry, right? Like, it's easy to say this, hard to do, but a portfolio should be like a thing of joy and pleasure because you're doing what you love. So do not think of it as like, there is a gateway that things that you must show. And if we don't see this, you're not going to get in. So if you can, like, put all of those concerns completely aside. And then what I would say is, because we're going to teach you this stuff, right? Architecture is loaded with skills and knowledge, and we wouldn't exist as a professional program if we didn't have the capacity to teach you that. So that's like step 1. And then step 2 is a couple of pathways, a couple options. Visualize your own expertise. So whatever your own undergraduate background is, like, show us that, right? Like, draw what you know about your previous background. Photography, annotated photography, help us understand how you see the world. Don't construct for yourself something that you can obsess over or work on for a while, that can be sort of layered with productive mess, right? So this is where really not worrying about being polished, but being tactile and material can really be your friend. Remember, there's no right answer. Like, if I looked at the 20 best architecture portfolios from last year in our 3 and 3rd year program, they wouldn't look at all like each other, right? So again, I think it's been said before, like, show us what you are interested in and curious about. Don't obsess over it being perfect. Yeah, that's where I would land. Tiago probably has some more insights.
Yes, I can compliment you, but Anais was here to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Go
Well,
ahead,
why
Anais,
don't you
and then
compliment him before I go in and say
Okay.
something completely opposite? Go for it, Tiago.
I can do that. So this is, as Carl said, this is a very common question, especially to some of the graduate programs where students apply with all sorts of different backgrounds. One very common question we have is, how can I show skills that I do not have? And so people start being super anxious about the creation of a portfolio. It should be the other way around. What is the richness of your background and how can it contribute to your coming into landscape? Well, in my case, into landscape architecture, right? And so I actually have to say that over the last few years, some of the portfolios that made me most excited about were the ones where people were coming with completely different backgrounds, non-related to any sort of architectural thinking. But because they managed to show in a meaningful and complete way what point of view they were trying to explore, or points of view they were trying to explore by coming to landscape, and how that intersects with landscape architecture, it made me really excited. And eventually they are here with us and they are thriving because our programs don't worry about not having skills. If we think that you're ready to come to RISD, we will provide you opportunities to explore those skills and that kind of thinking that we need you to have before you graduate. That's all I had to say to what Carl said already.
Sorry.
The dogs always know when it's just about your turn.
I know.
Yeah.
So I agree with everything that's been said. However, in the fine arts, it's varied actually. For instance, painting wants to know that you're a painter, right? This is the terminal degree. This is the time where usually the MFA in painting and sculpture launches your art career more than your undergraduate. There won't be a lot of skill building. There's just a lot of sort of theory, feedback, cohort support, and all of that. Mm-hmm. In the material-based fine arts, which would have been called the applied arts, for instance, in glass, ceramics, textiles, there will be some skill building, absolutely. And we do appreciate seeing people from other fields. However, it's hard to know that one is materially based maker if they haven't done it yet. And so there has to be some demonstration of that in the portfolio, because the big question will be, will someone even like this activity in order to find expression and, you know, content and context and all of that. So I think in the fine arts, we're very, very careful about those applicants who don't have backgrounds, but for the most part, we're looking for applicants with visual backgrounds.
Yeah, and I think, Anais, just to piggyback on that, I think that when people are coming into fine arts from a different world as far as their bachelor's careers or degrees, a practice has to be there, right? It can't come out of nowhere. So it's either you're a practitioner, you're practicing within that discipline or field or theory, or if you don't have the skill and that's something that you're looking for to gain, you go when you get that skill, right? Yeah. And then you incorporate that into the theory, into the things that you're doing right now. And I think that that's the best advice, because it's not to say that people only with BFAs get into the painting program. It's just, you know, or even just the sculpture or printmaking. You know, we do look at life experience. We look at sort of what uniqueness you're bringing to the table. For example, we had a student in graphic design several years back who I met at a portfolio day, and she had these little wonderful claymations that she was showing me. And I said, you know, I don't know what program you would fit in. And it turns out it was graphic design. She got in, she came here, and she did great, you know? And so I think it is about how you position yourself and sort of your personality and the life of what you do in the portfolio in whatever way you can.
Yeah, and I mean, the glass program has, I don't know if they still do, but the 3-year program, and the first year really is a post-bac. Yeah. It's not a 3-year program, it's a post-bac program that then people will go into the graduate program if it seems like that media and direction is the right thing. And so I think I agree with everything you're saying, Molly. However, I don't like people to get the impression that they're going to learn a lot of skills in the graduate programs in the fine arts, because they'll be disappointed, right? There's not going to be a structured course in many of the departments where they're going to learn how to take a photograph or learn how to paint a painting. That's just not the reality in the fine arts departments. Yeah.
Totally. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital media, it's a mix of what you all have been saying, right? So, you know, we have people from all kinds of backgrounds and engineering, sciences, design, art. I think, you know, that's in a way that's one of the strengths of the program, is that we just have this very diverse cohort. We have an astrobiologist right now in our program, for instance. I would say, though, you know, in thinking about all these possibilities of range of background for our particular program, you know, your portfolio should show some engagement with new and emerging technologies. It should show, so, you know, that could be computation, that could be digital fabrication, it could be physical prototyping, electronics. There's a whole host of ways that you could be involved in kind of new and emerging technology. But, you know, if that's not part of your portfolio, then it might be a question of like, well, is this the right program for you, right? Because there might be other programs at RISD that are more suitable.
Yep, totally. Let's see. We've answered a lot of these questions, thankfully, because there are a ton. And I'll tell you right now, we're not going to get into everything, but I'll try to pick out a few. And of course, I just want to put out there right now that Jen has put in a link to our grad open house, which is coming up the second week in November, just 2 weeks away now. And that is going to offer deep dives into each individual graduate discipline. So I think if you want to get a deeper dive into the portfolio requirements or tips that might be for graphic design specifically, come to that event. Or if it's about glass or jewelry or metals, you want to learn about that post-bac, come to the event. You know, and that way you're going to hear not only from the GPD, but potentially some current students, and then we'll be there as well to support. So I just wanted to make that plug if you don't get your question answered today to sign up for that event, because you'll likely get it answered there. All right, let's see. So, formatted PDFs, we already said no. Okay. Getting back into something that Carl had mentioned, did you make it, or was it fabricated, or maybe it was Tiago who mentioned, I can't remember now. But this is a question, wondering what the guidelines are for putting in a piece in your portfolio that you designed, but was physically produced elsewhere. For example, this question is for Anais. I'm interested in applying to the textiles MFA, and I've had some blankets manufactured. It's my concept, design, and pattern, but I had it produced elsewhere. Am I okay to put that in as long as I specify, or will that hurt my portfolio? So I think that's a good,
yeah, no, it won't hurt the portfolio at all. You know, if it's the question of, if everything is manufactured and that person, let's say, wants to focus on weaving as their primary, and that is a woven manufactured product, we would still want to know whether that person has ever worked on a loom, right? Or because there's a distinction between hand weaving and jacquard industrial weaving, which we do all of, but we believe the route to industrial weaving is through understanding the fundamentals of hand weaving. And so that will be a question, but no, we are completely open to industry and people from industry and manufactured products, as long as, yeah, it's clear what we're looking at.
right. Thank you, that's great. And that's a good little distinction there, right, too, between saying something is yours, but you never really, like, making sure that that is known and distinct in your portfolio when we look at it. Absolutely.
I mean, in the art world, a lot of things, you know, with very accomplished artists are fabricated by other people. You know, do those people know how to make so that they can actually inform the process if someone else is making it? Those are the kinds of things that I think are become important.
Yeah.
But that can also be focused on in the MFA.
Okay, so this question is interesting because it kind of talks about coming from different backgrounds, but within arts and architecture and design. So maybe coming from graphic design into printmaking or something to that nature. What should they put in their portfolio? Do they want to try to mold themselves to try to do printmaking, or do they stay with the submitting a graphic design portfolio because that's what their best work is?
Stay in your lane or you'll be punished. Just kidding.
That's not true. But yeah, no, stay in your lane. I like that.
Honestly, I think it's really discipline specific here at RISD, and I would hesitate to say anything. I wouldn't want anyone to say what we want in a textile portfolio, and I think printmaking. So I would really encourage people with those kinds of specific questions to, you know, meet with the faculty and grad program director from the disciplines that you're most interested in, and do that at all of the schools that you're applying to, because from those questions, you'll really find out which are the best programs for you. But it's really discipline specific at RISD. The bad way of talking about RISD is that we're siloed, and the good way of talking about RISD is that we're deep disciplinary. And because of that, the portfolios can vary.
Yeah.
And
totally.
that's a good way to flip the script and interview us, right? To evaluate like how good is an architect at talking about a print as a work of architecture, and like what kind of discursive capacity can exist in a deep disciplinary culture like RISD. So yeah. But I wholeheartedly agree with Anais, is that that's the kind of question that's really tricky to talk about in a way that's, transferable from one.
Yeah, one
discipline
size
to
fits
another.
all is just not the case.
Even the way like a graphic designer would talk about printmaking is different than how an architect would talk about printmaking. Like how an architect will talk about textile. I would say it's always going to be relevant in some way, but it's going to be different.
Watch it, Carl.
Yeah. You watch it, Anais. As you can see, everyone out there, we're all, intense, brutal rivals at RISD.
Oh my gosh. I think, I think in my piece, I've seen this successful in a sense where they're able to stay in their lane where they're showing the work that they're really good at, but addressing the transition in a way that shows the experience with building, say, or installation or mechanics or whatever that might be. Show us that transition, because I think that's important, and also back it up in your statement of purpose. Like that's your place to tell us what's going on, What else, Sean, you have anything?
Yeah, I'd say, I think it's if you're shifting from one discipline to another, one field to another, I think it should be evident in your portfolio. Like there should be some work examples that show us that pathway. Show us why, why you're making that transition, and talk about it in your written statement. Hopefully it manifests in the work in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point. It shouldn't leave the review committee puzzled about why you're applying.
It's part of the storytelling that is important in the portfolio. It's like what work is first, right? What work is second? You can kind of think about that as a part of a progression that you're giving the reviewers the opportunity to kind of go from one piece to the next, and you can kind of think about how one work informs the next as they're going through that.
I want to add something about the general application, and that's that know about the school you're applying to, know about the school that you're asking questions about. All the programs are different at different schools, and it's really important to do one's research and narrow down and then ask questions that are really relevant to those programs. If the application process comes off as a more generalized application, meaning it's just as good at one school as the other, that can really sort of hold back one's kind of ability to move forward.
And I think it helps in understanding fit. Like, what do you want out of your graduate education? What are you looking for? And if it is building skills within painting, this might not be the best fit. And understanding that it's not, right? So understanding what you're applying to. So again, coming to those open houses, asking the faculty face to face. This is a step in the right direction because you guys are here asking us now. So
there's a really good question. Do you mind, Molly? Like,
yeah, go for it.
Someone's asking about interest in community and participatory design, social engagement methodologies, advice on do's and don'ts, and that touches on a kind of trend that certainly exists in architecture. And I do have some explicit advice about that, which is recognize the pitfalls that you are not here to describe and let us hear the tone. So that kind of work can sometimes it can backfire, right? It can seem like virtue signaling if you're showing us a photograph of your engagement as opposed to your work setting up that engagement and learning from it. So for example, I really do like to see things like how you have set up, like define the rules of engagement, or written a syllabus or an exercise, or organized a community event. Those like behind the scenes things really help. I'm not saying like the event itself isn't meaningful and that can't be included also. But I think all of that's really smart to think about. It's like a representational question. I mean, in a way, if you're asking this question, you're already 90% of the way there, because it warrants thought, and just sort of how you treat that type of project is probably, no matter what, it's going to be different than how you would treat like a completely autonomous project.
Carl, have you heard, and I don't know, this might be a good example of how to treat something like that and how to show that kind of community involvement. The project Look at Art, Get Paid is collaboration between grad and undergrad students here at RISD. And if you just Google it, you can see it was a project here that we did at the RISD Museum, or they did there. And then it got picked up by the Met because it was a great community endeavor. And so I would encourage students to go look that up and Google it if you have the time, as an example.
That's a great example, yeah.
Yeah, anyone else? All right, $1 million question, guys. We've got 10 minutes left. How has COVID impacted the programs for next year? And of course, it's impacted everybody. We are on a webinar, not in person right now. Of course, we can talk to a larger audience, but it definitely gives us challenges as an art school where we want to learn physically. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing right now, what we've had to do, how we're dealing with it. And I can also say we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. You know, I think we're all planning for the next step, you know, the next semester, and then summer, and then fall. So it's kind of one step at a time, also seeing how everything unfolds with the pandemic. And that definitely drives the decisions that we make. So yeah, you guys have any stories that you want to share about things that have changed that you're doing?
There's so much that
I mean, just little nuggets, I guess.
I mean, yeah, Carl, do you want to say something, or?
I mean, I'm gonna say one brief thing that has been, I'm still processing in the architecture department, but it's provided, and this isn't really how we're adapting in terms of teaching pedagogy, but it spawns from that, right? We're spending more time on Miro and on Zoom. I'm recording more videos. I'm asynchronously communicating with students who are kind of leaving video voicemails to each other. There's a kind of new genre of work in architecture, which is a little bit like TikTok inspired or tutorial inspired, the kind of hybridization of didactically explaining work and reflecting work, and that becoming a narrative body of work. So it's a little bit intersecting like conceptual art and the algorithm, that things that we often, talking about lanes used to be really clear lanes, like the tutorial lane, the lecture lane, the artist talk lane. It's getting much more muddy. And I'm seeing a lot more student work that is experimental in its delivery method, like much more online performative components rather than like PowerPoint presentations. That's the kind of thing that I think is going to be lingering in my mind and in the architecture department for quite a while.
I like that. Yeah, that'll be nice to talk about with you more. I'll talk more specifically about textiles, but just serendipitously, I've been running a program, a post-bac type program in the Emirates this is the 8th year, and it gave us multiple faculty members at RISD a lot of synchronous, asynchronous experience. So I find that the sort of interface with, the sort of synchronous, asynchronous was probably a lot more fluid for some of us than others. However, the loss of the studio in March was profound. The loss of the equipment, the loss of that very harsh cutoff was profound. And so we spent pretty much every minute of the summer organizing every inch of the space so that students would have access to the machines, the equipment, and the studios. And so I'm not going to say it's as good, and I'm not going to say, oh, COVID made us more creative or whatever, things that we like to say. There is a loss when you're a maker and you depend on your peers being next to you to learn and to challenge each other and to find criticality. You have to figure out ways to sort of have that manifest in other ways. And I think we're all working very, very hard at it. But we of course hope that come September, we're back to normal or some sort of normalcy. Yeah.
I would just add to what has been said and include something here that is RISD specific. So although COVID is impacting us all, regardless of where you live, where you are, what you're doing, I think that at RISD, because of our pedagogies, because of what we believe in, it has meant that, I would say that there were lots of transformations institutionally and personally. And I think that out of those, the ones that I see with more appreciation is what faculty has been doing to make sure that the student community and the relationship between peer-to-peer, as Anais was saying, is somehow still functional. And I would say that despite all the issues that we may be facing, because this is a transitional period, let's face it, we're still learning, but despite all those contingencies, I would say that RISD, as I'm seeing it now, is very functional in very exciting ways. It's just a different way of working, and we are going through it. So next year, whether we believe in the fact that we will be fully normal or not, whatever normal means, I think that COVID actually changed some of the ways we know and some of the ways we do for good. But regardless of how that process will unfold, one thing that we can make sure is that the faculty here at RISD is constantly thinking about ways to make this work. And so that's actually our Pledge of Allegiance, let's say. That's how we work here. And so when Anais says that we spent the summer, or in textiles, they spent the summer reinventing every single bit of the department, I would say that that's something that people need to know, is that we will continue to do that as far as we possibly can. And so if students are nervous about coming, I would totally get that. I think that it's a decision that needs to be made, but I would also advise people to contact the departments themselves and see how they are reacting to their specificities, and then take it from there. That would be my advice.
Yeah, and just one other thing to add to that, Tiago, is that actually during the open house, several departments are going to be inviting those that sign up for their program of interest, or indicating that that's their program of interest, into the studio critiques. into their Zoom meetings to sort of see a window into what a guest critic looks like via Zoom. So I think you might get some windows into that world too. And I'm sure just by emailing the GPDs too, that would be helpful. Sean?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, this experience has, I think it's made us all just highly, you know, intentional and careful with the in-person time that we have with students. Not that we weren't already, but it's really put a kind of hyper focus on that, where when we are meeting in person or we are making shops or facilities available, you know, we're really, really being careful about that and very, very, you know, I mean, kind of hyper specific with the schedule to really maximize everybody's in-person time in the studio and with the facilities that we have, and to make that as equitable as possible. So, you know, we're in digital media, we have some things that are hybrid, some things that are online, some things that are in person. And it's just kind of like we're learning what that balance is, you know, but you know, we're listening to our students. We're getting feedback from them. They're telling us what's working and what could use improvement. And you know, I think that's part of the grad school experience in a way. You know, is that like we're a team. You know, your faculty and your cohort are a team, and we make adjustments as the world is kind of changing around us. We can adapt. So if the schedule needs to change, it needs to change. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway I get is that, you know, we're all still learning and we're still trying to keep that excellence of education at the forefront of our minds, you know, and not sacrificing anything in the end, knowing that hands-on experience is definitely in a cohort community is something that's really important to a graduate program. So thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you to our faculty panel. This has been really great, really helpful for the students, I'm sure. We have a ton of extra questions. You can always email us at admissions@risd.edu, but we hope to see everybody here at our open house. And again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.